Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, like me, like me, like me, like me.
Grace. As a child, I heard that it was amazing. A sweet sound that was somehow saving, for grace saved wretched me. I was so out of place, headed down the broad road entered by the wide gate. No concern for God's embrace, no desire to seek his face right, comfortable in my sinful state, choosing the ways of death, living life at my own pace. And yet he released his grace. Such necessary 5 letters to the Christian faith, G-R-A-C-E. And I can't forget about its companion, mercy. See, mercy goes wherever grace goes, and God is rich in them both. And so, when I think about the 5 letters in grace and the 5 letters in mercy, I can't help but to visualize 2 hands. Anthropomorphically, instead of God lifting up his hands to me to reject me, he stretched forth his hands to receive me, to welcome me, to love me in my unlovable state. Hear me clearly. Jesus, God in flesh, stretched out his hands to welcome me, openly, publicly, shamefully, for shameful me. And to think that I had the audacity to look at Jesus with a turned up nose and a twisted face like he was the disgrace. All the while he voluntarily stood in my place. Shame on me. And biblically speaking, there's no more shame on me. Jesus bore my shame on Calvary when he took the blame for me, all so that I could hear, not guilty. No death sentence for me. I am totally free, and now it's my utmost responsibility to live for him openly, proclaim his name publicly. Jesus is my everything, my hero. Without him, I'm nothing. Zilch, zero. Grace. God's righteousness at Christ's expense. So not only did he pay the way for me, but he paved the way for me. Him who knew no sin became sin for me, so that I, through him, could be housed in God's righteousness. Don't miss this, but get this. Before the world and its foundation, I was snatched from the grips of Satan and eternal damnation, blood washed from all iniquities and cleansed from all impurities, then seated with the King of Kings way up in the heavenlies, above all principalities. The same ones that used to have control of me no longer have control of me, since Jesus has promoted me, offered me a new position, and faith was all it took to get it. I thank God for faith, for grace. It is the foundation to my salvation, and it's truly amazing, but not to be limited to amazing. See, grace is also enabling. So it took grace to save me, and now it's taking grace to keep me. Now I get it. Grace for grace. It's never ending. The gift that keeps on giving. I need grace just as much now as I needed it in the beginning. It's grace that keeps me winning. It's grace that keeps me going. It's grace that keeps me knowing I can do all things, press through whatever life brings, because of the grace dispensed unto me. Grace, God's enabling power to do what can't be done outside of him. According to the proportion of your faith, each one of us may have been graced differently, but each one of us has definitely been graced sufficiently. More than enough. He has given us more than enough to do everything he commands us to. Considerably for our so-called inabilities, there are no acceptable excuses. So any attempts to justify disobedience to God in any way whatsoever is useless. Having said more than a little bit, I said more than a little bit, there's this one question I'll pose, weighing heavy on the eternal fate of your soul. Have you received this grace? Have you received his grace? It is the only provision for heaven's admission. Grace is the only provision for heaven's admission. And though it costs God everything, it's freely given unto you by faith. So don't leave having not received it today. Don't leave having not received Him today. Jesus is the embodiment of grace. And I repeat, such necessary 5 letters to the Christian faith: G-R-A-C-E. Interchangeable and or exchangeable: J-E-S-U-S. The two are inseparable. Jesus gives grace definition. He's the only reason that when we kneel down to pray, the Father actually listens. And if you can just muster up a simple mustard seed sized faith and believe in His name and the reason He came, thus receiving His grace, Jesus can and He will save you, enable you, and simply amaze you with His amazing grace.